transition to Agile is 15% tools, tips, processes, procedures, tricks, whatever you want to call it, and 85% the psychology of the people you are dealing with.
Welcome to Tech Talent Today, where IT leaders share their tough challenges, creative solutions, and latest insights. You'll discover fresh ideas and inspiration here with your host, IT staffing veteran and president of Claremont Technologies, Jody Kulik-Mayer. And now, here's Jody.
Welcome to Tech Talent Today. I'm your host, Jody Kulik-Mayer. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Angus Muir. Angus is a Senior Director, Application Delivery at an international insurance firm, an Agile practitioner and Agile coach. For 20 years, he has drawn on his broad experience to guide organizations through the journey to implement and scale Agile. He is focused on building beyond team-level success, working with corporate leaders to solve complex issues of merging Agile principles into existing corporate cultures. His experience as a leader in application delivery has positioned him to merge the theory with the needs of the work, team, and the organization. Welcome, Angus. Thanks so much for being here.
Great. Thank you very much, Jody. Really looking forward to this. This is a very exciting opportunity.
I was as well. We were introduced by a mutual friend, Adlai Taha, and he said, I had to talk to you because you were instrumental in his Agile journey.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great to hear. And I really enjoyed working with Adlai, and I'll be sure to catch up with him on the $50 I owe him for that plug.
Love it. Love it. So you've been an Agile coach for 20 years. What did you do prior to becoming an Agile coach, and why did you decide to become one?
Well, it was interesting. Prior to when I first started my career, I was sent over to the UK to work with a manufacturing firm that built military radios. And that was a great opportunity to get introduced to the ideas of lean and lean manufacturing. And once I started to see the applicability of that and how it applied to software development, that's just about the same time the Agile movement was starting in the industry. So it was really exciting to bring those ideas together. And then I've been involving them ever since. Very, very, very interesting path, and it gave me a very broad view of not only how does Agile apply to software development, but how it applies to other things we do, like marketing, like human resources. And I know even in Canada, the Saskatchewan health system started applying it to running their hospitals. So it's got some very broad applications.
Yeah, that's so interesting. There was a lot of interest within my community when I said I was talking to you. And a common question that I received is Agile only for software development, or could it be used with business teams? And I guess tell about your experience with that, and aside from like the manufacturing industry.
It was very interesting. What I quickly realized about lean and Agile is there are a set of principles. I know most people look at it as maybe a way of doing work. You know, we do Scrum or we do XP. And I've quickly realized those are just somebody's interpretation of the core Agile and the core lean principles. And if I go back to those principles, I can turn around and apply them to just about anything. And so I remember having an individual come to me and say, I'm really struggling with my sales process and how I get through sales and how do I make sure I'm focusing on the right things. And so we turned what his problem was into a Kanban solution where we're just pulling work through his processes. And over time, we refined it. And he moved from a very kind of scattered approach into a very narrow, very focused Kanban approach where he always knew he was focusing on getting the job done. So those deals that were closest to finish, he'd focus the most on them, get them over the line. And then he'd be pulling other things forward, as opposed to what we see a lot of people do saying, well, I got to get this customer going and I got to get this customer going and I need to move this. And they get 100 things moving at once. And the challenge is nothing gets finished. And that's one of those core principles in a good lean system. Limit your work in process, reduce your batch size so that you're not spreading your efforts so thinly across so many things, nothing happens. And the phrase I love to use is, I can say, hey, as a team, why should we look busy finishing one thing when we can look really, really, really busy not finishing three? And so, and that's a common trend I see in every organization I deal with.
Go and tell me a little more about that.
So the trend I see is there's this belief that starting something is good. And so there'll be pressure to say, well, get this started, get this started, get this started, get this started. Next thing you know, you're trying to work on 6, 7, 8 things. And I know people will say we're good at multitasking. And I will definitively say right now, we are terrible at it. We stink at multitasking. For me to context switch from one job to the next, I lose 15, 20 minutes of just getting my head organized before I can move on to that next task. And so imagine if I context switch 5, 6 times a day, I'm going to lose an hour and a half of productivity just because I switch tasks. So we think we're good at it. We're not. And I've had a lot of people challenge on me on that and say, no, I'm good at it. And I'm going, you know what? Here's the book of research that says why you're incorrect in your thinking. But here's why you believe you're good at it. And I honestly believe you think you're good at it. But here's the evidence that says you're actually not. And when you really start to absorb those ideas, they take a very hard look and they go, you're right, I'm not good at it. And it's stressful. Wow. Does it ever create stress in an individual to have this big to-do list of things that aren't finished? I mean, just look at that list you have around your house. And how much more manageable and less overwhelming that would be if you just focused and got a few things done and let some of the bigger things just linger a little longer while you got the immediate priorities done.
Now, is that something you also apply in your personal life? Like once you've bought into the mindset, do Agile principles for everything?
It absolutely is. So I do work very hard at how do I limit the number of things I'm doing simultaneously? Why am I starting something else if I haven't finished the jobs I have in hand? Because it just creates a big bag of half-finished work. I'm actually in the process of renovating my house right now, and I actually do the renovations myself. And so it's very exciting for me to say, oh, I'd love to start this project and love to start. No, right now I'm finishing that workshop. I'm going to get the workshop done so I can move the tools in and get them laid out properly so that I have an appropriate place to work as I do more parts of the house. It's very desirable. It's compelling to want to go work on, let's get the tile in that bathroom. Let's get the plumbing set so I can start using it. No, focus on finishing the first job first. Then I'll move on to those other things.
I'm guilty of that as well. I'm decorating 2 rooms in my house and they're both going on at the same time and neither are finished. So
there you go. So a living example. Thank you for making.
Yeah, I'll have to. Yeah, it's true. And I think I'm a good multitasker. So there you go. So was this like a mindset shift? Did you embrace it right away? Was it hard for you? Like, tell me like a little more about your journey.
I thought it was an easy mindset shift for me.
It just resonated?
Yeah, I was going, oh, this makes a whole lot of sense to me. Until now, 20 years later, when I look back and I go, what was I thinking back then? And I realized that it's an evolving mindset. So things even 5, 7, 8 years ago that I thought were sound set approaches, I now realize were very, call it rudimentary, and that I didn't have the depth of understanding to really dig in and do the right kind of things. So for me, it was, I focused on the principles over and over and over again, to the point where I actually wrote a Word document, just a one-pager that I was able to shrink down. And I put on it the original 5 principles for lean from the Toyota manufacturing system. And I went back to those Toyota principles because everything else is somebody's interpretation. They've all modified it a bit to accent and augment certain things. And I'm going, wait a minute, you left off something that's critical, or you kind of diluted something that was important over here. And so I always go back to those principles and look at them. And I find that when something's going wrong in my shop, I just have to look around and say, okay, what principle are we violating? And once I find it, it's like, there it is. There's the problem. Let's cure that issue. Let's get back on track with the core principle.
Right. When you were telling me about that, is there a specific situation that you had in mind, and like what principle did that refer to?
I'll go back to our work in progress situation, and this was a lot of fun. A piece of software had just gone live, and it was a big effort. It was about somewhere in the neighborhood of $35 million worth of work that got done. And of course, everybody who's launched a new software system knows that there might be a defect or two or 300-400 when you're into the production world. So these things are coming in like crazy now, and they're impacting our business to execute our business. And so there's our support team, and they're bringing in all this work. They're following their Kanban process. They're doing a great job of it. Work's flowing through. They're managing their work in progress, and they're getting results. Maybe they're solving, we'll call it 5 to 8 items a week. And that's not bad for the size of the team. They were doing well. And then the real problems came up. We started getting into the more complex ones. And I remember saying to my business partner, hey, you got some tough choices today. Am I going to eat or am I going to breathe? Because you can't do both. We don't have the capacity to do both eating and breathing. So which one do you want to do today? And they rather than struggling and making that tough choice, they started saying, well, can we get working on this? Can we get working on this? When can we get working on this? And they really started pressing very hard. And teams, being what they are, don't want to say no. So they started pulling all this work in. And it was amazing. Within 3 days, they went from releasing 5 to 7, 8 items a week to 0. They released absolutely no fixes for 6 consecutive days. And so that was that. They violated that work in progress limit. They had come off of what's called a pull system and into a push system. And one of the key principles is flow and getting work flowing through the system, which means I'm always interested in how effectively work is moving through the system, not what any one person is doing. If someone, has to sit around to increase flow, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay them to sit around, which makes, skin crawl on every manager.
Right.
So I pulled this team together and I said, simple choice here. Life kind of sucks right now. Morale's down. You guys aren't achieving very much. It seems like you have a lot of work in progress here. Fortunately, you guys have a mechanism that controls that and manages that. Oh, wait, you abandoned that. And they kind of all got that, you're right, we did moment. And so I said, here's my recommendation. Go out to the board, remove every single piece of work you are not actively working on, put it on the floor, see what's left. Pull through the work that's left. And as you pull things through, start picking work up again and putting it back on the board. That's my recommendation. I'm going to leave now. You guys decide what you're going to do. I walked by the board 20 minutes later. There's a big pile of sticky notes on the floor. And that was the tracking system they were using at the time. Sticky notes on a wall. Big pile on the floor. And the very next day, they released 2 fixes. And the day after that, they released 3 more. So you could see this immediate switch. They went from completely non-productive to instantly productive by making that one change. They had violated the principles and we found out where.
Right. Because that is something I do hear from people in the marketplace when they say that Agile doesn't work. They say that their management or the business requests something that's like not in their plan and they feel obligated to do it, just like you said. So how do you work with the manager or business person to get them on board? I have to say, I saw that you spoke at a conference, I think it was probably pre-COVID, and you had the title, The Problem with Agile is Not the Team, It's You.
Yes.
And I loved that. So how do you tell senior leaders and get them on board?
That's a lot of fun. I give that presentation a number of times, and I do have so much fun with it because it is very much targeted at CIOs and their direct reports. And what I'm basically saying to them is, you will do and say things that are very counterproductive to your Agile team's productivity. And, it's very much set up as a conversation I have with them, but I have definitely cast it in a very sarcastic light because I want them to go away feeling a little bit silly about some of the things they do. And I want them to see that how this little thing they're doing over here connects to the problem we're experiencing down here. And, and a very simple example might be, we had a team who the manager said, hey, I want to make sure we're properly utilizing all the resources. And so they went into the planning system and they started saying, well, who's working on these tasks? Why are they working on these tasks? What are they doing here? Why is it taking them so long? All the kinds of questions managers like to ask. It shows that they're large and in charge. And, I look at that and go, okay, that's only going to result in one place. The team's going to start creating a status report and they're going to start hiding information from you. And now what happens is instead of working on work, the team is working on gaming the system. And I keep saying over and over again to these managers, IT people are very, very good at 2 things. They're very, very good at solving complex problems, and they are excellent at playing games. And when you act like this, they're going to use their complex problem-solving skills to game your system, and they will hide everything from you to the point where you have no clue what's going on. And so I'll show these examples to people and you can see the managers going, oh yeah, I do that. And I'm like, of course you do. You've been trained to do that your whole career. You've been rewarded for doing that. You became a manager because you did that. So along I come and say, that's wonderful. That's great. Congratulations. Please stop doing that. What a difficult thing to ask of people. So it takes time. And I would say most of my coaching is focused on not teaching you the Agile principles. I can do that in a couple of hours. It's focused on how do I make you understand what that looks like day to day, and then how do I make those changes stick? So instead of saying I'm going to come in and I'm going to coach you for a month, I prefer approach where I say, I'm going to come in and I'm going to touch with you on a recurring basis for a very long period of time. So I'm not going to spend 8 or 10 or 16 hours a week with you. I'm going to spend 1 or 2. And we're going to do that for the next year. And we're going to make sure that you're moving your ideas forward and they're sticking. So very different approach, but wow, it makes a huge difference in the outcome.
Wow. When do you find that companies are calling you to come help them?
Usually on their second or third attempt at doing Agile. So they've done it, they failed. They've done it, they failed. Hey, can you help us? Yes, I can help you. And I have a group of coaches I work with, all who are full-time practitioners. And to me, that's very important. You must be a practitioner to coach. You cannot be a pure coach. You lose touch with the limitations of companies. You must be an absolute pragmatist to do this. And I explained to them that they are going to have to develop patience like they never understood before. They have to make people like Mother Teresa and Gandhi just look like irrational and reckless. That's how patient they need to be. Because what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be talking to people about these ideas, and then they're not going to do them. And we're going to say, yeah, that's okay. Let's talk about why you didn't do them. And we're going to get them back in the right place, and then they're not going to do that. And we're going to do that over and over and over again. And every time they don't do it, we're going to say, yeah, that's okay. Don't worry about it. You see the impact it had. Let's try this. And we're going to steer them there. And you know as full well as I do that steering someone who's had a very deep mindset put in them through years of success is very, very difficult. So we're patient with them. And we create this environment that's incredibly safe for them to be wrong over and over and over again until suddenly they're more right than they are wrong.
Do you think it's better to have an Agile coach come from the outside, like as a consultant, where senior managers can feel more comfortable being wrong as opposed to someone within the organization?
That's an excellent question. And yeah, I'm gonna say yes to that, not because it means more revenue opportunity for me, but
or me.
But there's two effects. And the first one you nailed perfectly is this person is not assessing me. And what they learn very quickly is whatever they say to me ends with me. It does not get repeated back. And I've had, executive directors and VPs say, well, you talked about the situation, what team? And I said, that's not relevant. And they said, yeah, but we want to help them. And I said, that's not your role right now. And pressed me very hard for who. And, I know with one person, I got to the point of saying, look, if you're going to press me for this, maybe I'm not going to give it. And if you need that, I'm probably not the right person to coach your team. It's that important. They must feel safe. But the secondary effect is, and this is odd and there's no reason for it, it just is, people tend to believe outside coming in far more than they believe inside. And so they've made this assessment of their inside people and they're going, yeah, I don't really value their opinion. I don't respect what they're saying. I will ignore them. And then someone from outside comes in and says the exact same thing and they go, wow, how insightful was that?
It's true. It's true.
So yeah.
So you're also an Agile practitioner as the director of application delivery. So how do you merge those two roles and also have people feeling safe because you're an employee of a company?
Yeah, I think it was very interesting. I have a team that directly reports to me. Now, I set it up in a couple of different ways. First of all, I span about 30 teams right now. So there's about 30 teams working to produce the outcomes we need to achieve across multiple, systems and multiple initiatives. I set it up that none of those teams will report to me with the exception of one. And so they all have their reporting chain that has a level of responsibility for their execution and their career development. And I am responsible for the flow of work and the overall productivity of the group, making sure we're producing the right things. They do not report to me. So when we have conversations, they're not fearful of, will this reflect in my review? And they've learned over time that whatever they've said with me stays with me. So that's very important. I was actually very flattered this morning. Someone out of the blue texted me and said, I got this new career opportunity. I'm really excited. And then they said, thank you for steering me, taking me down this road. You made it very safe for me to learn how to be this new person. And to me, that was just an incredible compliment. By the way, I did that for that person 20 years ago and they still remember. So
wow. Yeah, you made like a life-changing effect.
Yeah. So that's the number one. But number two is I do have a team that reports directly to me. They're what we would call a system team. So they span across all the other 30 teams. And what happens is when it comes to what they are operationally doing, what challenges they're facing, I never ask them about that, ever. If they've got it in hand, they've got it in hand, and I trust them. And if they have a problem, I trust they'll come to me. Because I never ask, they feel very safe. And so when they bring questions for me, we very much treat it as okay, we got a problem to solve. And then we solve the problem together. And when we're solving it, I will never use the phrase, here's what I would do, or here's what I'm thinking, or I'll talk to them about the challenge, and they'll say, okay, we're thinking this and this and this. I go, those are great ideas. And then I'll express some risks. And I'll say, have we addressed this risk or that risk? And sometimes they have, and sometimes they haven't. But never do I express what I like or dislike, because that's where you start creating an unsafe environment for people.
So that must be hard, because I can only compare it to myself to think, right? You immediately think of your own opinion. So did you have to practice to do that? Or I think it would have to be a mindset, on purpose, an intentional thing.
Yeah. You remember you asked me earlier about how hard was it to make the shift?
Right.
That was the hardest part. I remember thinking over and over again, there was a time probably about 8 years ago where I was responsible not only for the build out of the system, but the ongoing production support. So what was live happening in production? And when a big production problem came up, the hardest thing for me was to sit on my hands and do nothing. Because you know how it is. Managers are like, let me roll up my sleeves and let me get in there and let me, really make this happen. Let me show them how to fix this problem. And I had to be very cognizant and very conscious of the fact that I would say nothing as long as they had it in hand. And my only role was to keep all the other bodies who are trying to ask them, how's it going, away from them. And so I would be constantly going out and messaging to, maybe the CIO or the VP of the business unit being affected, saying, here's what the team's doing right now. I will be back in 2 hours to update you. And then I would go sit in the room with the team that was doing the work, but I would do something else. I was there to be available. And if I heard something I didn't like, I had to say nothing. I had to let them work through it and churn through it. And it's a messy process, and I just had to learn to embrace the messiness. And so, there's an unwritten rule in Agile that myself and a gentleman I work with called Ken Akai, we're thought partners in a lot of this work. We've discovered these unwritten rules in Agile, and we said one of them is you must be good with ambiguity. You must be able to embrace and get comfortable with ambiguity. If you cannot, you will struggle to be a good Agile leader. And so that was probably the number one thing I had to learn.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds tough. I try to put that restraint on with my son, right? So I try, maybe I'm channeling Agile principles in my parenting. So you're right. The principles do seem like they fit a lot of situations.
They do, yes.
So if a company is looking to hire an Agile coach, I find a lot of people have that on their resumes. So how would you evaluate who is the right person and a true practitioner and not somebody who's just in the theory?
Yeah, that's a really tough question to answer because a lot of companies are interviewing Agile coaches and are interviewing Agile people without having the experience in Agile themselves. So let's be honest, at that point, they're at best flipping a coin. And without that experience behind you of this is what a good Agile coach looks like, and this is what a questionable Agile coach looks like, yeah, it's going to be tough. But I will say there's a couple of things to look out for. In my opinion, again, my opinion only, you're looking for that practitioner who's done it. And so what you might do is spend a lot of time discussing, well, how did they do it? How did they work with those teams? What results did they see? Now, keep in mind that every person's going to be really selling the glossy brochure version of what they did. And they're going to tell you this great story about, we got huge productivity gains. We got this. And you're going to say, okay, well, how did you get that? And you want to get those very specific questions. When someone says, I got a big productivity gain out of my team, your first question is, great, that's excellent. What did you do to get that? And then you're going to listen to the answer. And if they start talking about the Agile principles and they're saying, what we did is we looked at those principles and we understood that we were not breaking our work down small enough. Our batch sizes were too big. So we worked with the team to figure out how to break our stories down a little further. We realized we had too much work in progress. And so we started working with the team on how to limit our work in progress. When I hear things like that, I'm going, there's a person who knows and understands. What's tough is when you get someone who knows the theory, they're going to say very similar things. And so then what you have to do is you have to dig that one layer lower. So give me an example of a story you broke down. Give me an example of how you managed your work in progress. Tell me about how the team reacted to that and some of the struggles you had getting to do that properly. And that's where the theoretical coaches are going to slip into more textbook answers, and the people who have done it are going to get into very specifics, and they're going to talk about what I did. And the more they're saying I, the more you know they did it. The more they're saying we or they, the more you know they observed it or read about it. And so you're looking for those little key words in there. There's a kind of an interviewing practice called character-based interviewing, and you're really digging into what did you do versus what did you read about or observe? And you've got to figure out how to separate those two during that interview process.
Right. That's great advice, right? To have personal examples where it was you. Though I do think different cultures, some cultures don't feel as comfortable saying I.
Yes.
Just being in IT, it's broad culture. So I guess you have to take everything in context.
Yeah, and you're right. Some people will say we, and you have to then draw that line. Are they saying we because that's a cultural norm for them, or are they saying we because they didn't actually do it? It's tough. When I'm faced with a lot of the we stuff, I will reply with the question, well, did you specifically do that? And they say, well, no, I this person was doing it. Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Right. That's a great follow-up question to ask it directly. So you've been in the insurance industry for a long time. Have you found that with insurance, they've applied the Agile principles to the business as well?
That is probably one of the new frontiers in Agile. Very few companies, certainly in the IT side, have applied it to the business. Right now, one of the big buzzwords out there is value streams, and we're going to create value streams. Now, when you look at the manufacturing world, Toyota and those groups, they absolutely created the concept of a product and a value stream, and we have this product that goes from beginning to end, design, all the way through to implementation to manufacturing to full-scale production. That's a value stream, and they have everything they need in that value stream to deliver on it. They have the marketing, they have the legal, they have the design, they have everything, and that's a great practice. Most companies aren't there. And it's a very complex idea. In my current organization, we've been working on Agile for about 9 years now, and we're just getting to the point where we're getting the business engaged in terms of a true value stream. Now, don't get me wrong. Right from the beginning, I engaged the business in the form, and you heard me refer to my business partner. And I said, okay, I was very fortunate to work with someone called Marilyn Russell. She had never experienced Agile before. And I said, look, the project we just finished, it was good. It was successful. It cost way too much. If we repeat that, the board of directors is going to shut us down. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use an Agile approach. And that means you're going to get deeply involved in the decisions we make day to day. That means you're going to see all the raw information, the good, the bad, everything. You're going to see it. And then we're going to decide together about what to do. And she said, yeah, okay, I'll give that a try. And she was an excellent partner. And so quickly, we got to the point where she was making decisions very quickly about what was right for the business. I was advising her on those business decisions. Are you sure that's what you want to do? Because it seems like we could create this business challenge. Or, hey, from a technology point of view, that could be really problematic. But at the end of the day, we had those conversations very openly, and then we made decisions. We dealt with problems very openly. And I remember we needed to bring in a new lead role across the IT organization. And I said, Marilyn, I need you to interview this person with me. And she was kind of taken back. Business people don't interview IT people. And I said, they absolutely do when both of our careers hang on the success of this person. So ultimately, I'll make the hiring decision. But if you are advising against the person and I hire them, I do so at my own peril because I've now broken the partnership. And we did. We ended up hiring someone together, and she worked out wonderfully. We were very happy to have her there. She stayed with the organization for 8 years and then retired. So it was excellent.
Wow, that sounds like a great experience.
Yeah.
Do you have a thought on what's the future of Agile? Do you think it's applying it to the business, or what do you think it is?
I would like to see that's the way it's going. I think it's going to need a lot of evolution. So, as I said, value streams, the big catchphrase. And I know you have a lot of groups out there that are starting to talk about value streams. If you are familiar with the Scaled Agile organization, CAI does the SAFE framework, Scaled Agile framework. They talk about business agility and value streams in there. You'll also find as you get into these discussions with anybody who's talking about it, they're pretty thin on the ground on what does it mean. So what does it mean to have an agile HR department? What does it mean to have an agile legal department? They don't really know. And we're struggling with how do we create the right governance around the spend of money and the execution of work to make sure that we're delivering the right value. Those are the things we're going to start expanding out into. And when we start to crack those questions and solve them in a way that the business is comfortable with, I think we're going to start to see things really fly in that space.
Wow, it sounds very exciting.
It is, yeah.
If people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to get in touch?
I can be reached at Amuir, AMUIR, at scrummasters.com. And that's the organization we do our coaching through. We've been doing it for as long as I can remember, and we've probably run 4,000 or 5,000 classes just on how to do Scrum. And then we started expanding out into the coaching because we quickly realized that I can tune the team as much as I want. I can get them to this finely honed machine, and all that ends up doing is leaving them idle a lot of time because the rest of the organization around them is not honed, and so they can't feed them fast enough. They can't keep them busy. And that creates all kinds of weird and unnatural things at that point. So we started to expand out. But yeah, if you were to reach me at that email address, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody who hears this has.
Wonderful. We'll put that in the show notes. So in case somebody didn't catch that, do you have any final thoughts to wrap up?
I do. And this is a very important idea for people to understand. Another one of those unwritten rules, and I say this often to people when I'm coaching, I'll say the transition to Agile is 15% tools, tips, processes, procedures, tricks, whatever you want to call it, and 85% the psychology of the people you are dealing with. We all like to focus on the 15% because it's easy. We can change it quickly and we can see some kind of incremental result immediately and everybody goes, yay, that's a win. And I'm going, but you're missing the real benefit. So always focus on that 85%. Empathize with the people, support them, and figure out how to get them in the right space to be effective at this. If you ignore that 85%, you ignore it at your own peril.
Wow. Yeah, it is tricky to deal with people's mindset. So that is a great tip to end with. So Angus, I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thanks so much for making the time.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Tech Talent Today, brought to you by Clearmont Technologies IT Staffing and Search. You can find out more at clearmonttech.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and share. See you next time.